Heather McDonald has got the juiciest scoop. When you're on the road, when you're on the go, Juicy Scoop is the show to know. She talks Hollywood tales, her real life Mr. Segment serial data and serial sister. You'll be addicted and addicted fast to the #1 tabloid real life podcast. Listen in, listen up. Whoop whoop. Heather McDonald, Juicy Scoop.
Hello and welcome to Juicy Scoop. I have a great interview today with a friend of mine who was one of the female writers featured on the special about Quiet on Set, which everyone is talking about, that docuseries. And I just found out that they are going to do another episode in April. They did this with the Playboy story about Hugh Hefner and all the Playboy playmates. Remember, there was like an 8-part docuseries on that, and then so much came out and so many other women got word of it and saw it that they then participated in 2 other episodes that came right after the final one aired. So it makes me wonder if maybe some other people are coming forward. Hopefully they were not victims of anything, but maybe they have other information to add. So I have a great, really juicy, interesting conversation with Christy Stratton about that and about just being in the business, Hollywood, being a female writer. First, let me just do some breaking hot topic news. On Monday, March 25th, phones were going crazy. The news was going crazy. P. Diddy both of his homes, his mansions, the one in Holmby Hills in LA and his other one in Florida, were raided at the same time. And he was on a plane and I think he has 2 planes. But I just read on TMZ that according to their sources, he was not aware that this raid was going to go on, according to them. And he was in an airport or a private airport with his kids who are school aged to go to the Bahamas and spend spring break with them when he got the word that his 2 homes were being raided. His two of his older sons that are, I don't know how old they are, but they were seen by the helicopter footage. They were in handcuffs at the LA property. I don't know if they are suspects of anything or if they were just doing that as a precaution because, they were raided and they want to make sure that the sheriffs were safe. I don't really know. So there's lots going on about that. Also, in this $30 million lawsuit, they're reporting that Prince Harry is, in fact, named in it. Now, he's not named as a defendant, but he's named in the lawsuit. That's all we really know for now. Prince Harry was only photographed once that we can find back in 2007 at a P. Diddy big party event. This guy, Little Rod, who is one of the people that's part of this lawsuit, he's the one that has stated that these sex trafficking parties and events and places where SA happened, that would be, there were other celebrities there. And of course, P. Diddy was able to pull in other celebrities and entice them with whatever is going on. So we will see what is obtained from either one of these homes and if this in any way gets P. Diddy arrested or helps with this lawsuit. It's a lot and it's just coming in. So, we'll definitely talk more about it as more information comes. But that was pretty crazy yesterday. This episode of Juicy Scoop is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com offers so many possibilities across the U.S. for all the travelers you want to be. From relaxing beach resorts to remote mountain cabins, the multitude of choices across the U.S. on Booking.com allow you to book whoever you want to be. So whether I'm traveling alone, going on a family vacation, or a girls trip, I want to stay at the best place with the greatest price. And that's why I love using Booking.com. So this spring, check out Booking.com for your ideal hotel or vacation home, no matter where you go in the U.S. Book whoever you want to be on Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Also, someone told me, a little follow-up on Tuesday's episode, the Ozempic baby episode, where I talked about how people are getting pregnant that couldn't get pregnant before. I just read a DM from someone who said, there is a hormone that happens in your body when you're pregnant that for people that struggle with weight is missing. So that's why sometimes when this particular Juicy Scooper, when she got pregnant, she actually like lost weight or was able to, carry this baby without gaining more weight because she had the hormone. And I guess that hormone for people that struggle with weight gain, they're missing that hormone. And that is what is in the Ozempic shots or the, semaglutide. And that's why it really works well for people that have suffered with a level of obesity. And for people that are just trying to lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds, it may not work and you may lose muscle. I thought that was kind of interesting. And how maybe by having that extra hormone or something is causing people to up their fertility. Very juicy. It's just, who knows? Obviously, I'm not a medical doctor, but since it's a big topic of discussion, thought I would share that. Also, I did watch a little more of Buying Beverly Hills, which is Kyle's family, Kyle Richards. And wow, it does really get good. Episode 7, we see Kyle again. It gets very juicy. Unfortunately, the news comes out about how they were separated. And that is nice to see that clarity because as people that we only got the information from Real Houses of Beverly Hills, the timelines of things were confusing. It made us wonder, was this put out for publicity? No, it really did come out when they were all out there together paddleboarding and doing stuff with the 4 girls. So I really think that part of it is interesting. But also yesterday, this went kind of crazy. There was a comment that Kyle made like under Morgan Wade's post where she said, save a horse, ride a cowgirl. And of course, people grabbed it. They put it on a photo of Morgan. A lot of people shared it. A lot of comments were like, tell me that you're jealous of your husband's reality show success without telling me that you're jealous of your husband's reality show success. Saying that she knew by writing that one little comment, there's so many eyes on her that she would, get people talking again. Remember me? Like, remember, am I gay or am I not? Am I with Morgan Wade? Am I not? Is this a little funny wee happy joke or is it not? Or is she doing what we've talked about with Evan? Is she the most selfless mother on earth? And by throwing these little fun things with people speculating between she and Morgan, does that get us to go turn on the Netflix Buying Beverly Hills if we haven't watched it yet? So all of that very juicy. Of course, what's really juicy is that I am coming to your town. There are lots of dates up there right now. Palm Beach, I'll be there on April 5th and 6th. And so many other dates at heathermcdonald.net. That's also where you join my Patreon. It's always commercial free. On Fridays, there's extra tiers. You can go all the way back. I think there's 6 years plus of content, hundreds and hundreds of postings that people really love. So thank you to all the new members that come. And now let's get into more about this shocking documentary and people that actually have a real say in it. Oh, I also want to say Drake and Josh, the show in which Drake Bell was on, I mentioned that I was a guest star. The way the universe works, I can't believe it. I just got 2 checks from my episode of Drake and Josh. And I think it was like principal, whatever, like guest star. And I was pretty excited. One check was for $3.98, but the other check was for over $100, which makes me be like, is this going to start like airing more because people are going to be seeking it out and wanting to see these old episodes? I don't know, but very coincidental. All right, you guys, now for the interview. Hello and welcome to Juicy Scoop. You guys have been asking for this, and I have the writer that you got to see in the absolutely such a well done but shocking documentary, Quiet on Set, Christy Stratton. Welcome back to Juicy Scoop because we met on Juicy Scoop like 8 years ago.
That's right. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. With all this stuff going on, I didn't want to participate in all their press things, but I thought I'll do one thing, and I'm going to go to my friend Heather's show and talk about it in my own words.
Well, I absolutely love it. And our little background is you were doing a really funny webisode, and it was getting a lot of buzz and like winning awards and stuff like that. And so your publicist reached out to me, and I watched. I'm like, oh my God, hilarious! And Guy Branum had a part in it.
That's right.
And he made a very funny joke about dry shampoo. You must have written where he goes, when your dry shampoo looks like a Victorian powdered wig or something.
Yes,
Something like
when
that.
I said Swiftian, I meant, that it looked like it was a powdered white wig.
There was such a funny joke. Anyway, but it's been many years. We tried to write something together, but all we did was go to your house in Encino and order like salads.
Le pain quotidien.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about cheer moms, and I still believe in that.
We did do a good outline.
We did.
But then you called me and you're like, I got Modern Family. I'm on the writing staff of Modern Family. And I'm like, oh my God, go little bird. Write for the best show on TV. And we've kept in touch a little. I saw your husband and son at like a carnival 2 years ago at St. Mel's Carnival.
That's right.
And then I was watching it and I mistakenly watched only the last 2 episodes. This is a 4-parter. And then my friend Brandy goes, you got to get this writer girl on your show. And I remember seeing like one small thing, and I'm like, and she goes, no, there's a whole first 2 episodes. So before I could even watch it, the way the universe works, you texted me.
That's right.
And then I said to Brandy, Brandy, I know Christy, like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So to fill people in, this is about Nickelodeon.
Yes.
Mostly it was all about the Nickelodeon shows of the early 2000s, which includes all that, which was a kids sketch show, and the Amanda show with Amanda Bynes, which was like her own sketch show. The spinoff of that was Drake and Josh, which I did a small part on. And so it's a lot about Dan Schneider, who created all these shows, who you worked for.
That's right.
And then, of course, Drake Bell of Drake and Josh was a victim of sexual assault as a child with the acting coach who was employed by Nickelodeon in these shows. And so that was really disturbing. And he was convicted, only did 6 months, insane. But now Drake, who's 35, has come out and shared that it was in fact him and tells his story. But your episode that you mostly featured on, you're featured a little bit throughout it, is really about how you got your first writing job on Amanda. So let's talk a little bit about like your background and how you got this job.
My then agent put me up for the Amanda show, and I think it came from a general I had with an executive, I think. So when I got hired on that, I interviewed with Dan, and I don't remember
Dan Schneider,
Yes, Dan Schneider. And the line producer called, and she goes, well, I've got good news and bad news. I don't know if she said exactly like that, but she says, we want to hire you. And I'm temping at the time in the human resources department at Warner Brothers, who are awesome and still my friends. I love them. But I, was ready to, I'd been out here for several years and I was ready to do something. So she said, but we are going to team you with a writer, another female writer. I don't know if she said female.
Yeah.
I don't know if she did or not, actually. That's interesting. Anyway, so I was like, excited, and like I went to the warehouse and bought a Kinks CD, and I was like, oh, this is my splurge because I've got a job. And the early days were a blast. And you know what? It was fun being I'd sidled right up to Dan, and he did call us the girls, and I understand.
So how many people were on the writing staff?
It was Dan and his second, and then me and Jenny and one other writer. So it was 5 total.
So the 2 of you are sharing a salary.
Correct.
Though you were not writing partners who came in, which I know back in my day, people would do that. And I believe later on, Writers Guild said that wasn't allowed.
Right. Paper teaming is what it's called. And I think it was illegal then too.
Okay. So, but again, this is why unions are built, because people are so desperate to have the opportunity to be creative that they would, without the unions, they would take nothing to work on these shows, you
Right.
know? So it's like you're anything to get your foot in the door. But you said okay.
I said, okay.
And this was a Writers Guild job.
Yes. Now, when you join the Writers Guild, it's like $1,000. Like you have
Right.
to, there's a lot of money. And I thought, oh, don't they cover this? But no, they
Yeah.
do not. And so like I said, those early days were fun and frivolous, but anytime he'd say, hey, do a thing for $50, I would jump at it because I needed the money.
Now let's talk about having him do something. It wasn't like go pick up lunch though for $50, or was it?
No, it was little things.
So little funny things to amuse him.
Right. And sometimes they weren't money. Like we did a smell the writer competitions where I was blindfolded and the writers would walk up to me one by one and I had to guess who they were just by their smell. And it was fun.
And you guys would just do this in the middle of the day just to procrastinate?
Well, again, this is my first show.
Yeah.
And I know from running rooms or whatever, sometimes you need a little bit to let off steam and be a little silly or watch a funny video or something to kind of like get everybody in again. And but it was fun and light, and he was funny. And I mean, you couldn't go to the bathroom because there was always going to be some joke played on you when you walked in. Like everyone would ignore you or people would throw pencils at you. And guys, I really want to say that I did not find any of this part abusive at all. I didn't. I mean, the thing I talk about in the show I thought was a little much, but
Let's tell it. Let's tell that story. You tell it there. Let's tell it here.
Well, I didn't tell it.
You're
though.
right. You didn't tell it. Jenny
didn't tell it.
told it, the partner.
Well, he said, I was telling some story about high school or running for high school something. I don't know. It was something that was germane to whatever my pitch was.
Okay.
And he said, what, can you do that and, act like you're being sodomized? And I was like, no. I mean, I know I said no.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, come on.
Dan said, come on.
That's right. And I did it. I mean, I did it.
So you stood up and then told the story.
No, I bent over the table and told the story like I was being sodomized. I did it. I'm not proud of it, but I did it.
What I think is crazy is that he used that word. Like I could see I couldn't see it, but it to be honest,
I don't know that he used the word. I just
you don't know if he said acted out like you're getting it from behind or something.
I don't. He could have. To be
Okay.
fair,
All right.
I don't know that he used that word, but
All right.
I know what he meant.
Okay.
And so even then, I wasn't demoralized until a few things. One, I tell in the thing where I had eaten 2 pints of ice cream and wanted the money that he bet me to do it.
So he said, "Will you eat 2 pints of ice cream for $30?"
Well, it was like $200 or $300, something like that. And I did it. And but days passed, and I did not live high on the hog. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Burbank, but I still needed the money.
Right.
And we had kind of developed a friendship. That's the thing about like a showrunner. You want to be buddies, but at the same time, you've got to have that line. And so after he asked somebody to kill a fly for $30 or whatever that was, I said, "Oh, I'll do it, but should I add that to your tab?" Kind of joking. I don't know. I really didn't mean any ill intent.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to humiliate him.
Right.
But he called me into his office and
Right then or later in the day? Like I wonder, did he laugh it off and then was like...
I don't remember.
Okay, so he brings you in and
he says, don't you ever accuse me of not making good on my bets again. And I just said, oh my God, I am so sorry. That is not what they were all there for the bets.
Right.
So it wasn't like any new people were there. And I really felt terrible. I really did. And so the next thing, and by the way, it's not that Jenny and I can't hang and hear dick jokes and trade saucy barbs. It's the bullying and where that went that was, to me, the most traumatic. The sodomy story, honestly, is like 5th on my list of traumatic stories. It was the first weekend that he wanted to work. Now, he did a lot of farting around, but guess what? As a showrunner, you get to, we'd show up at 10. We wouldn't work until noon. But that's his prerogative. That's his show. So one weekend he said, hey, we need to work this weekend. When is everyone available? And I said, oh, I'm available all weekend except Saturday night. I'm having friends over. So we do Saturday. Saturday day is the agreed upon day. So we're in the writer's room. We're working. Day turns to night. And this is before cell phones. So all these people were going to show up in my apartment in Burbank and call the police because I'm not there.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I got to go. I've got people at my house. And he's like, all right. And then they worked a couple more hours, and I felt terrible. So weeks later, it was the Bruce Springsteen concert. It was the opening of the Staples Center on a Sunday night. And again,
By the way, have you seen Bruce Springsteen? What happened over the weekend?
No.
Bruce Springsteen looks like Tilda Swinton now, or what's that actress?
Tilda Swinton?
Swinton, yeah.
Well, what, like with plastic surgery or what?
I don't know. I think because his hair is short and gray, and I think sometimes men do start to look like old lesbian nuns. It just happens.
Uh-huh.
And then also he like busted open his shirt, and he like had pretty good pectorals, but it almost looked like they were breasts. This episode of Juicy Scoop is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. Booking.com offers so many possibilities across the U.S. for all the travelers you want to be. From relaxing beach resorts to remote mountain cabins, the multitude of choices across the U.S. on Booking.com allow you to book whoever you want to be. I'm definitely a different version of me depending on whether I'm traveling and who I'm with. So whether I'm traveling alone to do a bunch of shows, or if I'm with my son looking at a college, or going on a family vacation or a girls trip, I want to stay at the best place with the greatest price. And that's why I love using Booking.com, because there's such a variety of places to choose from that fits each trip perfectly. So this spring, check out Booking.com for your ideal hotel or vacation home, no matter where you go in the U.S. Book whoever you want to be on Booking.com, Booking.yeah. You guys give me so many compliments on my hair, but I have to tell you, it can be really time consuming. And there's a lot more things I'd rather do than try to style my hair so it's not frizzy. I'd like to watch all the old episodes of Housewives and just snuggle in my bed. But sometimes I'm like, Heather, get out of bed. You got to do your hair. Well, now let me introduce to you Ouai's new anti-frizz cream. It is a lightweight cream that provides immediate frizz control that lasts up to 72 hours. It's not only a time-saving addition to my routine, it prevents heat damage because I also do use a curling iron and a hair dryer, and all of that can be protected by using the anti-frizz cream. Also, I love that it helps reduce and repair split ends, which I really get. Frizz-free up your schedule with Ouai. Go to theouai.com. That's TheOuai.com and enter promo code JUICY for 15% off any product. That's theouai, TheOuai.com, promo code JUICY. Anyway,
oh, honey,
the internet went ablaze. But go on. But you were going to go see old Bruce Springsteen, cute Bruce Springsteen.
That's right.
Go on.
1999 Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
And again, we're working on a Sunday day.
Yeah.
Day turns to night. And I'm like, I'm put in this I mean, of course I went. I did not go. And then that Monday morning, into his office, he says, no more leaving for fun again. And I was like, got it.
Now, how old are you at this time?
I turned 30. I just turned 30. And so at one point during the show, I got to audition for a small part.
Okay.
And
on the show.
On the show. And I got it. And by some miracle, because like I say, not good.
Yeah.
And I'm in the wardrobe or I'm getting dressed or whatever. We're about to shoot. And his second in command comes and says, hey, did you know that you are being paid as an under 5? And you have 7 lines. And I go, what? I go, wait a minute. I'm getting half a salary. I'm, what? Like, I'm sure in the moment to him, I was irate. But I'm like, what am I going to do? So I'm like, putting whatever, I'm telling you, not 2 minutes later, Dan comes blustering in. Do you want me to start cutting lines? Because I can do it. And I go, oh, no, I'm fine. And I'm like, what just happened? What was that? I would have never known. I would have never said. I don't know what that was. So we all during the weeks were on edge and paranoid. And at one point, Jenny got to have her own office. And so one of the other writers would go hang with her. And of course, I'm like, oh my gosh, are they, talking about me? Because at this point, near the end, it was
how
very...
How long of a time were you working on the show?
Gosh, it was 20-something. It was back when you
like
would do
6
22
months.
episodes and something like that.
Okay.
And it was very clear. Oh, by the way, after one of those times he yelled at me, one of the writers had a Xanax. It was baby's first Xanax. Because I'm like, I can't go back into that room. Anyway, so it was so clear that he just did not, that I was the one on the outs.
Yeah.
Then it was the Tuesday before the Friday, which was our last taping. Now, they had to build sets and stuff. So by Tuesday, we were done writing. Mm. So I asked him. And by the way, when I got hired, I said, well, sometimes I have auditions. He's like, you can go auditions. Just clear it with me. By the way, I had no auditions. Uh-huh. But I said, hey, my manager, there's a director, I have an idea. Again, it was the Tuesday before the Friday. In the morning, we never even worked till noon. I said, can I go on this meeting? And he approved it. And I don't remember if it was an email, but he approved it. So I go, I have this meeting. And it's getting kind of a little later, so I look at my beeper, because we had beepers. No one's beeping me. And then I get all the way back, and it might have been around noon. I might have been like cutting it close. And everyone was in the writer's room, and I'm like, what's going on? The line producer calls me into her office, and she says, you're being fired. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, there's excessive times that you weren't here. And I'm like, huh? I go into my office, my computer's gone. Now, when you work on a show, they provide you with a computer.
Especially back then.
Yeah. Or you use your own and they give you a stipend. But so my computer, thank goodness, I thought all along I was going to get fired. So whatever things I saved along the way. So computer's gone. And I'm like, I'm shaking. I get my stuff. The woman who felt pity for me and helped me out and gave me my crew jacket, whatever, I don't know what she did in production. She was not asked back because of that kindness.
Right away? Or when the season ended, she wasn't asked back?
Back then, the season 2 started right away. So it would have been, I don't know, within a few weeks. But she was not asked back because of that kindness. And I know this because I've been told this from others who were around. So I go back to temping. And then it's the holidays. And I was about to have like a lunch with my agent and manager who stood by me. And my agent at the time, apparently when I was fired, he's like, if she is such a problem, why is this the first I'm hearing of it? And I'm like, great, they're on my side. So I get this phone call from the manager, and I get the email from the agent first. And he says, I am not meeting you for lunch because I am not interested in representing you anymore. And it was so dark. And it was like, I've heard you were talking about me in the writer's room, which is a breach of agent-client privilege.
Now, is this agent a man?
Agent-client privilege, not a thing.
Is the agent a man or a woman?
Man.
Okay.
And it was so... And this is, by the way, this is what I was talking about him in the writer's room. You guys, my agent didn't come to my birthday party, and he hasn't come to a taping. And the other writers are like, Christy, your agents aren't your friends. Like, I'm new to all of this. So I may have, talked in that way or reacted, been very reactive to things.
But all I'm getting
is
that, and this happened to somebody I know too on a show when they got fired from the show, they also... were at the same agency as the person that fired them, who was the star of the show. And then all of a sudden, they no longer had that representation because I sometimes think the agent wants to just please the bigger star. And they think whether it's a direct order from the star or showrunner or creator or whatever, or they just put it upon themselves to be like, I just want to be seen in a good light. And so since there's no longer a connection, I'm going to just dump this person. And it happens all the time.
Well, it was done with such darkness. Like the way Dan painted it.
Right.
So it was basically they weren't the same agents, by the way, the agencies. So we're two different agencies.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yes.
That even makes it worse.
So then he also, of course, trashes me to my manager, and she fires me. So I have nothing. I have no representation. I have nothing, and I just couldn't believe it wasn't just. Listen, we had 3 days left. He could justifiably not invite me back. Because I don't know that I contributed as much as these others. Like that, and that would have been justifiable, to be really honest. But the fact that he punished me for a thing that he cleared, and then he piles on all these weekend night things, it was so devastating.
When I was thinking about this the other day, and I know so many women, myself included, that have had moments as writers on shows and things where the male who's in charge would fire them very abruptly or weirdly like that. And I always wonder if it was just, I do think it was sort of gender specific. And I do think there was something about a guy just being like, fuck that bitch. Like, something like, how dare she? Because I never hear about it a guy. When guys got fired, it was like, they brought, they told them nicely, or they told them directly to themselves, or they, gave them another chance.
Let them fulfill their contract.
Yeah, it's just not the same. And they're like, I literally probably know 5 women that have like a similar story to that, of being one of 2 female writers on a thing, thinking things are going great, thinking like I knew this woman and she was working on a hit sitcom, and the guy was really powerful and went on to do a bunch of other sitcoms, and they were joking about something, and she thought they were joking and telling, that camaraderie between men and women. And she always thought she could hang with the guys. And he said something like, oh, fuck you. And then her name. And she goes, well, fuck you too. And then she got fired. Like right nuts. Away. Like thought everything was fine. He walked away. He chuckled. And then 2 hours later, she gets called into the line producer's office and is like, get your shit. You're done. And so I just think there's just something so interesting about that. Now, working on the Amanda show, obviously you're in the writer's room and stuff. Did you have much contact or observe anything with the kids and all of that?
Well, because we were there on the Paramount lot with the soundstage. So we went down there not infrequently, and I gotta tell you, I saw nothing but support and friendship. And I mean, they were younger. I mean, this is the first year, so all the kids are young, and I never see anything untoward. And Amanda's parents were there, and I'll never forget the mother. I think her name was Lynn. Always had a smile on her face, always. And they were nice kids. Like and this was before, by the way, the pedophile and the predator. They came season 2,
which is featured in the show. There was a PA that was a full pedophile with many victims that he would meet that were extras or acting on the shows and have relations with, and they caught him. And then the other pedophile was the male acting coach of Drake Bell.
Yeah, he definitely, but I think that other guy was on all that, or I don't know. Jenny was like, oh, did he? Jenny thought maybe he could have been there some of season 1, but I'm like, I don't think so. I think this was all season 2. So we weren't there, and I, honest to God, I never saw anything that seemed weird or out of place. And it was, we were like, what was so maddening.
Was Drake and Josh a spinoff of the Amanda show or a spinoff of all that?
Well, of the Amanda show, because season 2 is when Josh came. Like, I never worked with Josh. He wasn't there when I was there. But in fact, it made me so furious because he was so mean in the writer, or at least to me, or in that whatever. But then on the set, he was just friendly and loving. Dan. And so it made me, I'm like, oh, I wish we had that guy. We had that guy behind the scenes.
I mean, I just saw some videos of Amanda. It is just like heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. Like, she's got these black eyebrows. She has a face tattoo, this dyed blonde hair, and she's the way she talks to the camera is like very strange. And she's like, so I'm trying to get my manicurist license and I didn't pass the test. But if I do pass the test, I'm going to be doing it at this salon in Beverly Hills. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, we're definitely coming. Like, do you imagine a bit? And, you know, before that, she was trying to go to like FITM and do fashion. And after the Amanda show, she was in so many movies. She was in Hairspray.
Yes.
And she was, you know, She's the Man and all these things. And very cute. And I remember the first time I saw her, I had this manager who had managed Margaret Cho, and then she was managing me. And I went to her house to talk about whatever, something that's not going to happen or whatever. And and she had this VHS tape, and she goes, you have to see this girl. And she puts it in, and it's this little girl at the Laugh Factory. And she's doing these jokes. And I remember she goes, everybody says dating is hard. Dating's not hard. I think roofing's hard. And I was like, oh, that's like pretty funny. Like, and right then I'm like, I don't know. I've seen other kid comics, and most, you know, and like now I've seen on American's Got Comics, most of the parents are like writing it for them, and it doesn't matter. She could deliver it.
Right.
And then and literally my manager wanted to be like, screw Heather, who's like 26. Let me find this 10-year-old. And then within like 2 years, she has like the dream show that every sketch comedy woman wants, is to be the Carol Burnett. And here she is like 12.
Right.
Carol Burnett. And I do think it was a genius idea of Dan Schneider, because he was like, wait a minute, I'm just going to kind of take all these classic sketch type ideas that have been on SNL and everything else and make it for kids. And the kids think it's fresh and funny. Her acting like Judge Judy, they don't know who Judge Judy is. They just think it's like a little girl being like, hey, I'm talking to you. And you know what? I was like, I mean, it was smart. Well, it was a smart idea to have like a kid sketch group and stuff. It really was.
And he was so, it had to be funny for kids. Like, we wanted it to be like Warner Brothers cartoons, where it's like they're really smart and like bring the kids along. And he's like, nope, they had to be silly and kid. You know, that was part of, I guess, what made it so successful.
And how did you feel about when I remember like probably about 5 years ago or so, is when someone brought to my attention the compilation YouTube video that someone did of all these inappropriate things that the kids were doing on these Nickelodeon shows that were all under Dan Schneider's regime. And it was a lot of foot fetish stuff. It was a squirt, like trying to get one of like a yogurt, and it squirts like it looks like a cum shot onto little Zoe 101, Jamie Lynn Spears' face. And it has Ariana Grande when she had like holding a potato going, I'm trying to get the potato. Can you get juice out of a potato? And like they also did those shaking exercise things, all these things. And I never remember seeing sexual stuff, but I do remember walking into a room and seeing my kids watch that stuff. And it was like iCarly with the other girl, Jeanette McCready.
Right.
And I remember they're just like standing there, and I'm like, and they're talking about like a boyfriend cheated and this and that. And I'm like, why are these girls acting like it's an episode of Friends? Like, they're 12. Nobody who's 12 has blonde, long hair extensions, full eyelashes.
Right.
And they're like, you know, have their little boobs. They're like not even teenagers yet. And I thought that was so, and I was like, I don't like these shows. I remember being like, I don't like these shows. And I didn't even see the sexual stuff. I just thought the storylines were like too mature. But the sexual stuff. Did you see the Ray Romano part in the
Yeah.
So Ray Romano's like a guest star. Yeah. And he maybe this was first season of whatever, Everyone Loves Raymond or whatever. And the pedophile who, assaulted Drake Bell, they're like, he's the pickle boy. He had a small part on the show. And he's all about pickles. And then they have Ray Romano sitting in a bathroom with no doorknob. And they're like, would you like a pickle? And they push the pickle through the glory hole. Yes. It's literally like through the glory hole. And then they have Ray Romano holding it like a dick with two hands and like, eating it. Which I wonder, like, Ray Romano must be dying.
I'm sure.
Like dying right now because A, did he think about it at the time at all, but was like, whatever, it's a gig. Maybe it was before he had his own show and was like, hey, we're not turning down anything. This is what they want me to do. I'm just so grateful that my tiny part had no weirdness in it, which my episode of Drake and Josh was I played a mom. It was probably 5 and under, but it was a guest star. Maybe it was just a guest star, but it was small. And I'm supposed to have this kid, and they're waiting to go on a roller coaster ride. And I was like, hey, stop. The kid is bugging them. And then I'm like, hey, stop being like that to my kid. Like I'm being an annoying mom. And Drake and Josh are there. So I didn't see anything weird. The wardrobe girl was someone I knew from my neighborhood. And so I happened to be working on it. And he, the only thing I remember is I was like, oh, I go, my son, who's 21 now. So my son was like a baby. I go, my son is named Drake too. And Josh is like, oh, that's cool. And Drake goes, actually, that's not my real name. And this is like 4th season of the show. And Josh is like, it isn't? And he goes, no, it's Jared Drake or whatever. Drake is his middle name. And I remember going, that's kind of weird, like that he wouldn't know that.
Right.
But then at the other hand, but now I'm like, boys don't ask each other questions, so it's not that weird.
Yeah, that whole thing, I kept up with it and watched it, but to me, it just took away from the bullying. I'm like, let's not lose focus on the fact that he's a tormenting bully.
Dan Schneider is.
Yes. Like
so forget about the dumb, inappropriate jokes.
Well, and I don't mean forget about it. Just meaning,
but there are no accounts of him doing anything to any kids.
No.
And people look at Amanda Bynes and they're like, was she a victim of something? Maybe not him. Maybe someone. People think that about Britney Spears. They were both child actors. Who knows who?
Right.
When you think about all the stuff they did, all the movies, all the acting, an agent, and one of the things that is so sad about the Drake Bell thing, which is like what pedophiles do, whether they're a priest or a coach, they find the kid that, maybe is from a broken home or a single mom. And if the single mom is a nurse with 5 other kids and they're like, I'll take the kid to and from swim practice. That's been going on for 50 years. Like, since the very beginning, it was, and sure enough, Drake Bell was working with this guy before he had his regular series. So he was going on auditions from Orange County. And the acting coach pedophile said, well, I'll take him from Orange County to Hollywood. And then when he'll be so tired, we won't do the 2-hour drive back. He could spend the night at my house. And the mom trusted it. And I always thought, and I thought this about the moms in Leaving Neverland too. Let's just pray for those moms because they did not know, they did not think about it. And you see Drake's dad cry, but I also really feel for the mom who was not featured. Like,
I'm sure she's embarrassed
and horrified.
Yes.
And also I want to say what's great about today is self-tape.
Right.
Like, my God, if this was now, this kid would, maybe occasionally go to LA, but not till it's like the final round.
I constantly, from when Johnny was young, my son, have said, because he's got lots of coaches and stuff. He's never alone with them, for too long. But, if something seems inappropriate to you, let us know. And, his pediatrician from when he was a baby, like I mean, we're pretty vigilant about things like that and have been since he was little because it's a nightmare anyway, but to go on that long and have him say nothing, it just breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart. I mean, the whole story is like every aspect of it, but the fact that he didn't feel like he could tell someone or I don't know. And I'm always a nice kid. Like those kids were all very nice.
I remember my brother was in a private school and, for so long, my mom would be like, oh, he didn't want to stay at that school because he said the typing teacher was always getting everybody massages. And so, he went out and went to the public school. And it turned out 30 years later, he was the total pedophile, the typing teacher.
Oh, my gosh.
And, that's the thing. Again, did my parents believe him? No, they didn't. but he kind of got like such bad grades that they had to put him into the public school.
Okay.
But he just thought it or saw it or whatever. And then those people would, go after the kid that had to be there early in the morning because they were getting free tuition. It was always something like they'd find a moment where they could be alone. But let's talk more about other experiences like in the business that we have found that with women and the stuff that we would put up with that. I want to congratulate the millennials and the Gen Zers that don't put up with it and that are better and more open men and women today than the Gen Xers and the Boomers.
Yep. The fact that
congrats to you guys.
If you are running a show and you're a millennial, guess what? You don't care. You're not just like, there's not one part for a woman. There's not one room spot for a woman. And I can remember being
there's
like...
There's more than one. You mean like, but there's only, we can have one. We can have one. Yeah.
Right. Back in the day, it would be, hey, I'd ask my agent, hey, I'd love to work on such and such. Oh, they already have their woman. Not all the shows, not all of them. But, and can I just say, when you are the only woman or the only low level, which that doesn't happen anymore either, your confidence, and I don't want to say everybody, for me, it took a while to get that confidence, because the confidence is 80% of it.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of pitches, there's a lot of whatever, and you've got to have the confidence to just pitch it, come what may.
Yeah.
And if there aren't a lot of people like you in a room, they're not gonna, like, it's not gonna get traction, it's not gonna get momentum, You're not gonna get confidence, and that took a while. But like I say, nowadays it is. Women, men, people of color, people of different backgrounds, and you want that as a group of writers. You want all the different perspectives. Now, yes, sometimes these Gen Zers can whine about stuff and I'm like, you know what? Take several seats. Like there's a line where how do I say this? There is a line, but we haven't crossed it yet. I know. Yeah. I know where that line is. I've lived in that line. But yes, and I felt, and this is another thing we talked about earlier, the Me Too movement was awesome. And I am so grateful to it. I and all those women that came forward with just harrowing tales. I wished the movement also included those of us who not necessarily were sexually harassed, because nobody's hit on me inappropriately.
Right.
No, none of that. But it just kind of stayed there. And then the men were like, "Oh, can I give you a compliment? Can I?" And I'm like, "Yes, of course you can say I look nice." Let's. So I wished, and Linda Bloodworth Thomason wrote a wonderful op-ed. I think it was in the Reporter. It was about Les Moonves, and it wasn't about him hitting on her or whatever, but it was about him being discriminatory against her and her female-driven show. And I was like, yay, this is what I'm talking about. Like, let's keep this narrative, or let's include this narrative, rather. And, I don't think it did. But like I say, it doesn't matter, because those old school, folks
Well, it's like and I don't recall whose story this was, but it was during that time, about a female writer. And the guy came up behind her and laid
Janice Hirsch
and laid his dick on her shoulder.
Right. On
while she was
Gary
working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just want people to know, that is the way an insecure guy acts to embarrass and make a woman be smaller. That is what it is. It is not because it's funny. And I want to also say, we don't also give the guys enough credit that are not pervs.
Yes.
That go up to the perv and go, fucking dude, stop it. Knock it off. There aren't a lot of those guys that do that. And there were a few people in my career that I always recognized, and then there's women that don't stick up for other women, and I've seen it where women, like a woman showrunner or something, is kind of jealous of you.
The last showrunner I worked with was a woman, and I'll tell you, every other day she would tell me how funny I was. She's the only showrunner who has asked me to work for her again, And there's just something to that when someone says, "Oh, you're funny," and there's a light airiness, and you get to, In fact, anyway, I've had female showrunners who have told me to my face that they thought I was funny. And I don't know that any of the males, and to be fair, like I said, it took me a while to get to where I knew what I was doing or had my own comedic take. It took me a while. So I don't want to make it sound like, I deserved all of this stuff right away. But I feel like I'm glad that it is not only more open to women to do different things in the business, but also women's stories and women's point of view on things. And I mean, it's a terrible time in the business right now, which is why
because a lot of things are not going into production, even though the strike is over. So there's a lot of people that are really struggling on all levels of production. Yeah,
that's right. It used to be these legacy companies ran things, and now you have these tech companies running things. And then I don't know how it's legal that a studio could buy another studio. That seems weird, but whatever, the government approved it. It's fine. So there's this strange contraction happening because of all of these sort of deals, which makes me think are they just planning on not having television anymore? Well, whatever. I decided to make this short because here's the difference between film and television. In television, you have to have these gatekeepers, and it's a long list of them, and to say yes. And they want to keep their jobs. So if I walk in and Mindy Kaling walks in, and we both have ideas that are, let's just say, equal and all, they're going to pick Mindy's because she's got a track record, because she can do several different shows in a year, because now shows are only 8 episodes. They're not, the orders are bigger, or the orders are smaller, so the same people can be doing everything. Or they'll make a deal with someone and just buy from them. And so anyway, the difference between television and film is with film, all you need is money. That's it. That's all you need. Now, that's a big thing. I'm going to raise $1 million to make my movie. And I couldn't even raise $32,000 but for the short. But it was at least very freeing and making choices and getting to, there's nothing like doing your own thing. There's nothing like it. And I don't know.
It is great because when you talk about when you're on a show and having to ask to do something, when you bring that up. And I remember I would be leading up to how I was going to ask, whether it was an audition or something, or to be with my kid or whatever. And I was like, how do I say it? When do I say it? Do I go to the top person, or do I go to the second tier person? Do I do an email? Do I knock on the door? I would stress about that so fucking much. And I'd be so jealous of, my male counterparts that were hey, my son has a baseball game at 3:00 today, so I'm going to leave around 2:15. And they're like, great. I hope he gets a home run. I'm like, what? I have been just freaking out because but that's part of my persona too. I just am a scaredy cat, and other people have more
that's
confidence.
Our generation too.
Yeah.
That's again, one of the reasons I wanted to do this short was because I don't feel like we have had our coming of age story. Here's the deal. As Gen X, we had loads of independence, but little confidence. We relied on ourselves, but we didn't believe in ourselves. And that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
And I think that not that people don't still enter a room and get nervous and all of that.
Yeah.
But it's not the millennials and Gen Zers aren't crippled. With that kind of fear.
Well, there
and all
are
of
some
that.
funny things that I've seen that I'm like, oh my God, this is so true about Gen X. And why we raise our kids, our Gen Z kids, the way we do. And it's because it's all of a sudden, moms should all go work. And so now we're latchkey kids.
Yes.
And you're supposed to answer the phone, but then you're supposed to act like someone's there. So we had to answer the phone and be like, hello, McDonald residents. Is your mom there? Whatever. And be like, well, she is, but she's in the shower. We had a whole thing so we wouldn't be I mean, I have a story about being flashed twice on the way home from school. Like we were always on our own. There was always about like there were people there were girls there was a kidnapping thing that happened. It was horrible.
Oh my God.
I mean, all these things that like just make us like we don't realize it, And so then it's like like we were able to do these things and we were independent, but you're right, we didn't have the
like that confidence that should have come with being able to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
It just didn't, it wasn't.
It's very interesting. When you were saying the thing about him giving you money to go do something that would be for his entertainment, I remember a story, and again, I'm remembering it, so I can't say it's like 100% true, that when Roseanne and Tom Arnold were a couple and they were in the tabloids all the time, there was a story about how she offered an assistant, the two of them offered an assistant or somebody $10,000 to shave their head. And I think maybe the girl did it. But it was like this weird like power thing that sometimes could happen with TV and comedy and like, oh, let me just see if I can like get away with this or,
Yeah.
like a food fight. You're like, why are we doing a food fight? Or like, it's weird. Like I remember like, I'll take two nice things about Chelsea. One is the first week I was there, she came in and we pitched things and she texted me and she's like, I'm so glad you're on this show. Your ideas are really funny. I totally love that. The other one, which I didn't mind it. It never happened to me. But we would be like, she would do this thing. We would be in bathing suits or whatever. You're on your yacht and then she'd like go sit on somebody's lap that's her friend and someone would take a photo and then she would just like pee on them. And I'm only telling it because it's in books. The lies Chelsea Handler told me. She has told about it. She thought it was funny. I don't even know if people didn't really mind it because you could just jump in the water, I guess. But it is sort of a weird power thing that I'm not saying she would do it now.
Right.
And I'm not saying somebody was traumatized or filed a lawsuit from it. But it's a power thing where you are like the court jester type of thing for the king or queen. And you're like, I just have to stay in this. I just don't want to be the one that's on the outs.
Right.
I don't want to be the one that's like the one that's not going to do the cold open where like at any time, like I have to have like a camel toe. Like there was this lady, this was funny. This stuff I didn't mind though. And there was nothing I did on that show that I was against. But there was somebody else that was like, I don't really want to do that. It was like making fun of like, oh, she's slutty or whatever. And she was a writer and she was like, I do live with my boyfriend. I don't know that he would like that. And then it was like, there was this kind of like, that's annoying. Because everybody does whatever it is. Chewy rolls around. I have a camel toe. Chris Frangiola is acting like some weird dude. Like we all did. And so then the one person that's like, very respectfully, like, could we think of something else? And then you're just like, so it's, then they're like, now she stayed and everything. But like, I just think that's it's a weird comedy world. And then I think then I remember at NBC, we had to talk to everybody about, sexual harassment, whatever. And they told that Supreme Court case about the Friends Room, which was, I believe, an intern or a writer's assistant sued and said there was such crass, dirty language and things, not necessarily directed at her, but she had to be subjected to it because her job was to be in the room, that she wanted to sue for that. And then it went to like the Supreme Court and it was like, this is a creative space and therefore it is okay.
Yeah.
To be, and it is a weird thing, and especially now, because that was like 15, 20 years ago that case happened.
It's just, if it's directed at you, if
Right.
it's just talk around the room and whatever, like it's different when it's just people telling dick jokes or whatever. One show I was on, the beginning of every single day, a junior writer would come and talk about the girl he slept with the night before in graphic detail. And one time she started her period in her bed. Isn't that gross? Oh, gross, 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 gross.
Yeah, sorry that we bleed once a month for 40 years.
But this was day after day after day after day. And I was fired from that show too. But
Did you ever say anything about it?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I wouldn't either. I'd be
Yeah,
like,
I mean, like it's like there's nothing actionable. It's just like ew.
No, I would be in a room too where like I would say, oh, I was with this girl and she had like a full bush and I got I came back with a razor and, all this. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I kind of respected that they were, there was something that felt cool that they didn't care that I was there.
Right.
That I was like, that's when I really got to learn how guys are so different than girls too. And how they see girls that they screw and girls that they actually love.
Right.
And I saw how many people cheated. And that was sort of heartbreaking because I was like, wait, he's married with 2 kids. And this story was only 2 years ago. So this story of him cheating could not have been 12 years ago.
Right.
And I was just like, oh, okay. Well, now I know. But
you hit on something that it is sometimes fun to be the girl in the
one of the
boys'
guys.
club. Yeah. I mean, and people I know have written about that or whatever. And again, it's only when it kind of turns on you or makes you uncomfortable, and who knows what that line is until it's crossed. And then if it is, then like you just, all right, you reset and all of that. Now
you told me a story, and it's kind of an intricate story, but how weeks or many time after you left the Amanda show, you found out that 2 of the main people,
Dan and a writer, were trying to sabotage it was like a Craigslist or something. I was selling stuff because I had no money, and I had
they were able to
confirmation.
go in as like a fake account,
right,
and kind of screw it up and mess with you.
Yep.
And I remember there was somebody wrote something about a writer's room, and they're like, well, a writer's room usually begins with the first hour. Everybody talks about the one writer that is no longer there. And like rips on them.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then they talk about whatever other things is so-and-so really this age? And then you finally start, pitching your stuff. But everybody is down to procrastinate for as long as possible. And that's really left up to the head writer or whatever. Okay, let's start pitching. Yeah.
And you should be able to feel free to say things or bring things up or ask questions or, even if it's not important to what you're doing, there is some leeway and you should be granted. And I just want to make sure that this is very clear that, I don't think there should be no curse words or no this in a room.
One thing you said about, and I remember when the Writers Guild was, on strike and all that to save money, they want to just give one person like a script. It's not as much of like a collaborative room or there's not the pre-production of breaking down, the season where you'd have several weeks before you ever shoot the first episode, whether it's in front of a live audience or, like a Modern Family, which is not. And they didn't want to pay for that.
Right.
And then they're like, but there's no way for it to be as funny as possible.
That's
but
right.
Secondly, that someone can then learn. If they're not around it, if a junior writer is not around it, they're not going to get better.
Right.
And it's the same way I feel about like when some like big TikToker who could do a lot of funny impressions and stuff. I'm like, they may not even want to be on SNL because they're like, well, I can make so much money on my own. But I'm like, but you're never going to go to the next level and be a great actor if you can't work with other people.
Right. Because that, by the way, that is a skill that is learned. Being able, and I during the strike, I taught a summer class at the University of Florida, which is my alma mater, and it was all about just the room. About working in a writer's room, how you pitch, and all of that. And because it used to be, King of the Hill, we had 15 writers or something like that. And what was great about having a big staff is you can split rooms and get more done. Because you don't put 15 writers in a room. That's crazy. Well, nowadays, these shows, and they're a lot of money's behind them, and they're prestige, and it's like one person. And I'm sorry, but some people can do it and pull it off. So I don't want to, whatever. Mike White, this is his process. He's a genius. It's all good. I just think that this the thought that one person can make something real good. It's just I don't know. I there are very few of those people, and to me it's wasted money. Whereas you get a room full of people and you have debate and you have, oh, here is something funny that happened to me that we could put in the story, and then oh my gosh, and this, oh, like, you know what, people don't say that anymore or whatever. Like
Right.
you have and I don't know, like there's something great about it. And even
Yeah.
on Zoom was a good stopgap. Like it was fine because I was on a show that was on season 2. So we Zoomed and it was fine. But then starting a new show when you're on Zoom, there's something about having that you start a joke and someone else completes it, or ooh, like it's this great thing, and I don't know why.
It's sad. I'm afraid like it's not going to be a thing anymore. Like
I'm hopeful, Heather, that with the strikes done and people figuring out who's going to buy what company and whatever, that's going to kind of settle, and then they're going to realize like, oh, we've got to have content. Like what are we doing? We can't just buy from overseas. Those shows are great, but people aren't going to keep your channel if you're not going to give them something fresh and interesting and new. And yes, the people who have deals with you are going to kick ass and do great, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
before we close, I just want to do a little bit of a follow-up. So Dan Schneider has done a small an interview. It was like 20 minutes.
Yes.
In which he apologizes. I think he also went on Ozempic. So good for him for that. And he's like, I want to apologize to anybody that I made give me a massage or made uncomfortable or whatever. And I do think that there's something interesting in that, like any tyrant, they sometimes they get mad and they try it. Like if it's your kid or yourself or your husband, and someone lets you get away with it, I do think it can. I'm not saying it's the people's fault, but I'm like, I think he had it in him. And then I think he was able to every year just keep doing this and acting horribly with no repercussions or anything until finally, I think it was I can't remember from the show, what was the impetus to finally have him go, oh, we have mutually decided to say goodbye and I'm going to take $7 million. And I think there was enough complaints or something, and then he goes, well, look, all these jokes about Pickle Boy and this and that, the network approved it and these people approved it. And I also think, yes, that could have been it. Also, I think who's ever approving it is a little bit lazy. He's doing good work. They're probably more focused on the show that's not getting the ratings. So they're kind of like, whatever, kids love it, and because no parent was, or maybe, and then I felt bad for the one boy from all that whose mom was stuck and was like, what the hell's going on? And then they said, we don't want to ask him back. And then she said that was a big problem for then she and her son, because he sort of blamed her for being the person that oh, you complained too much. That I wasn't, working, that I was having to do humiliating things. And he was black. So there was that element that he felt like he was being, cast and put in costumes. He was part of all that. So there was some weird humiliating sketches that didn't have to be that, and so there was so I thought that whole thing was an interesting thing. The Brian Peck pedophile of Drake, he gets out and then he gets another job on Disney, Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, who are twin boys, like a pedophile's dream, right? And somehow somebody finally, hopefully before anything happened, I don't know how long grooming takes, but I guess it hadn't come to it, and got him kicked off. And they're like, okay, I guess we'll do background check on people who are also freelancers. They were only doing it for people that were I guess, full-time employees, and not checking when you have a children's show.
Right. I can't, but if it was happened now, that guy would be ostracized forever. It would be all over the news. But the fact that a friend of mine who worked on one of these shows there was a party, like it was,
Yeah.
and he said that it was after that guy got out of prison, and he was at the party. And my friend was like, "What is this? Just are we gonna? Are we?"
But that's Hollywood for you. That is Hollywood for you, where people are like, la, 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 la. Like,
Right.
I don't want to know. I'll just get my drink. I won't leave my kid alone with him.
Sure.
But if my kid gets a job and he's there, I'll just make sure that we don't leave my kid alone with him. But I don't want to not have the job. Or I don't want to be the person who makes the waves and then jeopardize our career or my
Right.
kid's career or my career. And it still happens today with adults. They don't stand up for what's right in this business. And they are like, well, he was always nice to me. You know, and even with Jeffrey Epstein, he had dinner parties after he did his first stint of prison. When he was in Florida on the weekends, when that was all over, he was having dinner parties with a lot of people in Hollywood were, you know, and elites in New York were going to his dinner parties with his weird art and everything else at his townhome. And so other people were like, oh, there was some weird art. I don't know. But I got invited and I'm like, sure, I'll go. And maybe they never went back, but they didn't go, you guys, this is fucking weird. Like they did,
Right.
you know, they didn't.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my God. Yeah, please. Like it's so few people stick up. Yeah, so those were the things I thought. I mean, is Dan Schneider working on anything?
Well, I would posit that if he hadn't done that puff piece in the New York Times, I think it was in 2021.
What was that? What
well,
was that
it
about?
was a total puff piece, and it was like he's pictured like sitting in a tree, and it was all about like Dan Schneider's ready for his comeback. And the whole thing was just puff, 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 puff. There was no negative, like, oh, he can be tough. And there were several of us writers who had worked with him and are tweeting like, what is this? What is going on? Like this, he is a monster. Why? And even the one writer who was quoted was like, I included all of the stuff I said about him, and they just didn't put that in. So he must have gotten a publicist, and because at the end of it, it said, you know, he's got a pilot somewhere, and we're like, no, this is not going to happen. And so then I think after that, the Business Insider woman, because we were contacted, Rolling Stone was going to do a thing, but then the Business Insider article came out. And anyway, it just one thing kind of led to the other. But I bet if that hadn't happened, he would have just gone off into the sunset with his millions. But
Yeah.
he wanted to come back, and enough people were like, all right, let's delve into this. Let's delve into, you know, this just being mean. And, you know, Jenny ended up, because she was asked back for season 2, and they touched on this. She was asked back for season 2. Dan said, oh, you don't have to split a salary. We're going to give you $100 a week raise or something like this. But this is how we're going to do it. You'll be paid for 27 weeks and then not paid for 11 weeks. And yet he hired a male writer who had no credits at full salary. And she lasted 4 days. And the bravery that it took her to, and then that's in the special, where she walked in a room, all the guys were sitting, there was no seats. And so she's standing there with a pad, and he says, "Did you ever done phone sex?" And she was like, or something about phone sex.
Have you ever done phone sex?
Right. Or
worked
it
at a
was
phone
something
sex
about,
place?
didn't you do phone sex? Something about phone sex.
Yeah.
Where it was, and she's there with her pad. And so she went home and looked in the phone book for a lawyer. Bless her. And she got this lawyer, and they filed for sexual discrimination. And I'll never forget, I'm temping. She calls me. She goes, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, because they all abandoned me.
Right.
To your point about like when you have the stink on you.
Yeah.
And I wrote a letter, and that's why we were able to use certain stories, is because it was documented in this letter of this suit, which they settled. I believe that, that's.
She settled, and then, so we don't know what she settled for, but she left the business.
She did. She moved to New York to be with her family.
But she knew. She goes, I know if I sue, it better be for enough, because I know I'm going to be fucked. The
Right.
blackballing and what I've always said about the Louis C.K., how he treated those two women that he masturbated in front of at a comedy festival, And then they like couldn't get work. And I'm like, yeah, because he doesn't want them to be in a room where you start telling your juicy stories.
Right.
Because if more people know what a creepy is, so, and I always, I tell that story over and over again because I'm like, I want people to know like how fucked that is.
Yeah.
It's like you think, well, I won't sue you and I won't do anything. But they're like, oh, yeah, but I behaved badly in front of her. So let's just make sure nobody works with her. Because I don't want that story out about me. So I'll just blackball them.
And Jenny is a great writer. She was, at the time, definitely better than me. Like, she was just funnier. She had and I'm hoping that she will be able to, use this to try to, get some screenplay out there.
And then when they approached you to be on this, were you hesitant?
Yes. Because it's not that Dan could hurt my career. I was worried at like, oh, does he know where I live? Is he going to, kill my plants? Like everyone was so scared. And that's why I say in the thing that's why and people who have worked with him have gone on to the stratosphere. But everyone's afraid of him and what he would do in retaliation because something's coming. Like, I know something's coming. But
something's coming bigger about it.
No. Meaning, like, I feel like he's not going to just let this go.
Okay.
That's just my feeling.
He's going to try to redeem himself.
He went after me so hard 25 years ago. No, maybe he's matured. To be fair, I know I'm more mature than I was, back then. But everyone was just afraid. Even the people that have left the business. I'm like, come on. We can't be two women. Can't be believed unless Hannibal Buress comes and, like with the whole Cosby thing.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to say that we've got nothing, I don't want to say nothing but positive, but it's been lovely how people have reached out and been great. And I'm like, you don't even know the worst stuff. Like, you don't even know it. So everyone was afraid and I knew Jenny wanted to do it. And I was not about to let her do it by herself. I just wasn't. Like, I would have loved to have just said no. But then I thought, if it happened and I wasn't a part of it, I would regret it.
Yeah.
So.
But a lot of people, I'm sure, got offered and was like,
oh,
no.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone.
And it's like,
he worked with.
Are you going to talk? Are you going to, and then piss off somebody for, who knows how much they'll use of it and that type of thing. I've been part of documentaries as well. And I'm always happy with what I say and do because I've already said it here. So I'm like, sure, I've got nothing to lose. But I understand with other people in their careers or whatever, they're like, no. But when it's the right thing, I think that you should like stick by your friend.
Yeah.
When they're telling the truth and not just act like, oh, I don't know the story. You're like, but I told you the entire story and I showed you the proof, receipts, everything. I've showed it to you. So like and the people that were actually there with you and then you said that, they didn't participate, but then you'd hear from them after like, good job.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks.
Like, I'm glad you went out there and told the story. I'm not gonna, sign off on it publicly, but here's this text. Mm. And that is Hollywood, which is just different than other industries, and it's different because if you have credentials to whatever, be a dentist, a surgeon, a mechanic, someone doesn't like you, whatever, you take your resume and you go and you can still work at this garage. It's like Hollywood, someone doesn't like you for a reason that they think could affect them. And they can fuck you up or make you go away. And I'm not talking about necessarily murder, though I'm sure that's happened. But I mean, like, just make it difficult, alienate you, ostracize, make it that you're trouble.
Right. But
you're trouble.
I will say, it's different now than it was 25 years ago because there's such executive turnover. Like, no one everyone's just fighting to keep their jobs in any aspect. So I will say, I feel like that may be lessening. I feel that. I really do.
But I do think a lawsuit is really interesting because, you remember when Nicolette Sheridan of Desperate Housewives sued Mark Cherry?
Yes.
Have we seen her in much since? No, we have not. Okay. Then there's other people that I remember. Kristen Chenoweth had this awful thing happen on her on the set. A light fell on her head. And I remember going, oh my God. And she's like, oh, I couldn't do my tour. I lost $1 million because I sing and I used to do cartwheels and all this stuff. She was always, this entertainer. And I go, well, aren't you going to sue? And she was like, well, no, because I'm hoping to get this variety show. And this is just my recollection of the conversation. Okay. But I have a pretty great recollection, but whatever. And, so they sort of promised her that. Do you remember Kristen Chenoweth's variety show? No, it never happened.
I remember that story.
It never happened.
Oh, that's right.
It never happened. And, of course, she's done great. And she's actually doing the Broadway version of The Queen of Versailles, which I think is going to be so amazing.
Great.
And I know The Queen of Versailles. I know Kristen, and I think this is great. Everything happens the way it's supposed to be. But there is a, do I sue and possibly never work again, but then get this chunk of money I think I deserve?
Right.
And maybe do the right thing and show what's wrong and maybe prevent someone else from being hurt? Or do I play along in the hopes that they know that I'm an easy person to work with?
Yeah.
It's a very hard thing. Yeah.
Yes. If you're achieved a certain level, they will turn a blind eye to things because money.
Yeah.
If you're difficult, no one cares if you're a star. There are plenty of people who are deemed difficult that will that get my movie made? Great, you're in.
Right.
I joke kind of. But yeah. But we're in this new age now where nothing's getting done. So who and what moves the needle and all of that? I'm hoping that at the other end of the things that there'll be some sort of a reckoning.
Yes. Oh, one more thing I was going to say about the emancipation of kids.
Yeah.
And it's it's so hard because you hear these parents took the money, but there are laws to protect them. So then it's Amanda tried to emancipate, Drew Barrymore emancipated, then Drake, had his dad removed as his manager, Drake Bell, because the Brian Peck was I think he's taking money. And I thought about it too. He saddled up to his mom because the parents were divorced. And I'm just saying, he was an out gay man. And I think he probably charmed the mom and was like, your ex doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. This kid's going to be a star. So then the mom took over, and then he knew that the mom didn't want to drive. It's very, very planned out. And I just saw this girl who was a correctional officer, and she's like, I was a correctional officer for many years, but when I would go to the unit, because they'd have to have their own unit for pedophiles, she's like, they were the nicest, most polite, most charming. Can I help you with anything? They were the most normal looking people. And so that is the warning. But then she would go and look up what they did to get them in. And she was just horrified. The other people that were robbery and whatever, they're what you think they would be, crass and thug-like. The pedophiles are salt of the earth, nicest guy in the world. Mm-hmm. And then when those letters happened, so the letters of what happened was when he was, I think he, he was convicted, but I think it was almost let's have everybody write letters so he'll get less time.
Yes.
Character letters. And there a lot of other male actors had done this. Not Leonardo DiCaprio, but Leonardo DiCaprio was someone that he was a coach for on set.
Yes.
Which is interesting because, Leo's had a interesting love life, and you never know what could happen in someone's childhood that could perpetuate them to be into younger women, whatever.
Right.
Not saying anything happened, but it's just an interesting correlation. He did not write this guy a letter, but these other people did. And, only Joanna Kearns from Growing Pains has said, I am, horrified. I didn't have all the information when I wrote this letter 15 years ago. But the letters that were highlighted in the special, were like, he must have been tempted.
Oh, yeah. That's how they framed it, like jailbait. Like, he
must have been tempted. And, of course, at this time, they didn't, Drake Bell's identity was sealed at the time. But they knew it was a child. So I'm like, and they knew, I don't know if they knew it was a boy, but they knew it was a child. And I'm like, oh my God. And they all said it. And they were all like actors and everything. And I don't begrudge some of them not making a statement today because like James Marsden and stuff, because it's like, I get how this game is played. And if James Marsden just stays quiet about his letter, we probably won't be talking about this in 2 weeks.
Right.
But he could also say the same thing she said, like, my agent or manager told me to write that letter, but maybe not. Maybe he really did write it. Maybe he could say, I had a great experience with him. Or maybe he's scared too. And he did it because I'm not saying or he knows something or whatever. But when Drake said the reason I didn't tell is because I was like, if all of a sudden I act like I don't want to see this guy anymore, they're going to wonder why. And they're going to figure it out. And I'm so embarrassed.
Right.
I don't want anybody to know. Anyway, so I thought, it's hard. It's a very hard thing for parents, very hard position for parents to be in, and hopefully that won't happen anymore either.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure it won't, by the way.
Yeah.
I got the most lovely email from one of the moms of the kids that I directed the short. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry this happened to you. I think this is just when the trailer was out.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, I'm so sorry this happened to you. You made the set so warm and welcoming. And it was very nice. And I'm like, that's what I want. That was worth it for me. And
right.
a gal that in a show I ran was like, you ran such a great room or whatever. It was just, to me, of all the, like, it's all been very, I don't want to use the word triggering. Like, I don't want to make it like, bleh, but it's been an emotional couple of
right.
days. But in hearing those things and then like, oh, good, I took that bad experience and I made it into something, I learned from that. I learned how to not treat people and how to, I mean, how do you not? Like, how does anyone come out of that and go like, ooh, I can't be a dick?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I think the show is very juicy. You can watch it on Max or ID Network. Quiet on Set. It's 4 episodes. You're mostly in episode 2 or 1? 1. And Christy, tell everybody where they can follow you and look for your stuff.
Great. I'm on Insta, Christy Stratton. I'm on Twitter, but I don't really tweet. And I think I'm like, I don't even know.
Let's just stick with the Instagram.
Let's just Instagram. And I have a short that is going to premiere at the Florida Film Festival, world premiere. And then the short is called The Runt, and it is a proof of concept. I want to make this movie. But I got into an LA festival in the summer that I can't say, like they don't, until they give all the invites, they don't want you to say because they don't want to, whatever. But that's going to be in LA in the summertime. And so I'd love.
Can you say what the short's about?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the film is about.
Just say what the film would be about.
Well, the Shoot the Duck is about a teen, a tween, and a single mom who all come of age one night in a roller rink in 1979. And the short is the tween story. I just pulled her story. And she has been labeled, she's a 7th grade starts on Monday and it's Friday. And she has heard the 8th grade girls have picked her to be the runt.
And the runt means what? Like the dork? Like the
right,
the
like
target.
someone that they make like sit on an egg or like it's this ominous thing, like you are the runt. And so she decides that if she's going to skate with a boy by the end of the night to prove that she's mature and, doesn't deserve their derision. So it's her quest to try to skate with a boy by the end of the night is what the short is.
I think I would love that because I was roller skating at the rinks in 1979 too.
Yeah, there's not many roller skating things, and it was popular in people's lives.
Yeah.
Certain people, not everybody, but
And it's
our
I
generation.
love those like little moments in time too, in history and all that. Well, thank you so much. I loved catching up with you.
Same,
And
girl, same.
yeah. Bye.